the next thing is, in terms of actually presenting the plan itself, like that's a really, really important step. And kind of Dad asked me to touch a little bit on we've been kind of just drawing out the plan recently with people, and just found we've been getting some really, really cool results versus actually, pulling out the flip chart. Now, here's where I love the flip chart. I love the flip chart from the perspective of when you've got a flip chart, you've got a guide. Okay, so you take a brand new person. I had someone come over to my place on Friday afternoon. And because we're going to Bali, I said, look, here's the goal this week. You need to do 2 practice, and we need to do 2 together. So here's the flip chart. Go have a go, and it's fantastic for a brand new person. The flip chart's like easy peasy. You just kind of look at the slide, and some of you might remember Monica, who's Lithuanian by background, platinum in the business, now living in the UK, but she literally would show the plan knowing no English and point to a slide and say, does that make sense? And they would like read the slide, nod, and then should move to the next page. Does that make sense? Right? So, I mean, who cares? Right? And people don't understand it anyways. So you may as well just keep moving with it and keep going through the whole process. And that was just because her English wasn't great, and she's awesome. Like, she did an amazing job and learnt English through showing the plan. That's why her 3rd word was passive income, and just kept rolling. But the flip chart's fantastic for that. However, what I found is for a lot of us, like if you've got someone on your list and you're booking like hey, let's just get together. I'd love to run you through what I'm working on and hear about what you're doing, right? Which is a really great invitation for this time of year. I'd love to hear about your plans for 2019 and show you what I'm working on. Okay, sometimes it's weird to pull out a flip chart when it's like a casual conversation, and that's where a pen and paper drawn plan has a really beautiful process, because it looks like it's not anticipated. It looks like it's like, hey, well, I've got you, buddy, let me show you, and it's just a very, very casual format. So how we've been doing this, and I'll just quickly run you through it, but I'm not going to go word for word. I'm just going to explain the process and the principle of it. Is step 1, it starts the same like you would do a buffer, okay? And here's the power of a drawn plan, is you can stop it at any point in time. If they've got to go somewhere or they're busy, you can stop it and just make it a buffer and move them on to the next step, right? And that's the power of it. So you got a pen and paper, you're chatting with them. Step 1 that I go through is I talk about ESBI. So I always start the conversation around the cash flow quadrant. I ask their opinion on that, which leads me into a 10-year timeline, okay? So which is my normal buffer anyways, 2018 to 2028. So, and it leads you into that. So you're starting the conversation, you're bringing up the conversation of passive income, you draw out the 10-year timeline, and you're talking through their goals. Now, I'm not super melancholy with my 10-year timeline. The conversation I usually have is when I've explained this and I'm talking to someone and I say, so here you are now, what we've identified is, within what we're currently doing, we fast forward the picture here. If you guys are really motivated to create additional income, then what that means is probably more time that you've got to put into your industry over the next 10 years. Does that sound fair? And so then I say to them, look, and if you had to pick, what's more important to you, the extra income or the extra time? And I'll ask that question because it usually leads me into then talking about recurring income and talking about assets and actually asking them what they're currently doing. And that's my line, because I don't know, maybe it's a mental thing for me, but I just find that's an easier segue into, so what other options are you working on just off the cuff? Whereas if you're talking to someone who owns their own traditional business and they're working hard at it, most of the time they're proud of what they're doing, right? And because they've invested so much time into that. So what you're trying to connect with them is, hey, 10 years from now, what would be the goal for you? Is the goal that you want to kind of grow what you're currently doing and set up what you're currently doing? Or, what would be more important, more income or more time? And then if they say both, it's like, great, you know, and then you can what are you currently doing to do that? And it just leads you into a question and answer conversation, right? And you're just developing their dream and developing their reason. But off of that, then what I talk about is I talk about the income versus expenses bar, and I talk about most of us. The problem is when we're talking about, you know, you mentioned time is really valuable for you. Most of that has to be developed out of what you have left over, right? And then I bring it back to me and I say that's what I was struggling with, because obviously I couldn't see that happening. Dad uses his really fantastic $1,000 a month example. You know, if you put aside $1,000 a month over these next 10 years, you know, that's you sitting here with $120,000 plus whatever compounded interest comes along the way. I mean, right? Put $120,000 into an investment, better than zero, but you'd be lucky to earn $6,000, $7,000 a year out of that, right? And that's every single month for a year, for 10 years, that you put aside $1,000 a month, which most of us can do, but most of us don't. Would you agree, right? So what's the alternative? And I said the alternative with what we do is we talk about utilizing expenses. We talk about working with our current expenses to create results similar to that in a more predictable manner. And then that's when I draw out the manufacturing to consumer pipeline, okay? And I draw out that pipeline. I say we have an online shop. And what we basically do is step one is you can get access to a number connected to our online shop where you immediately cut out the retail to consumer line. I talk about the savings with that. I say there's exclusive and there's non-exclusive savings. That's an opportunity if you want to open up your flip chart and show them products in your flip chart and, you know, and communicate products or just talk it. Most of the time I've just talked it. I've talked about the fact that we have Telstra partnerships. I talk about NutriWay. If you have a tangible product with you, that's even better than opening a flip chart. It's even better. You pull out an excess energy or a protein bar or something like that, offer it to them and let them try it. You know, that's the best way to be able to do that. And so I talk about the fact that here, right, they're going to get roughly about a 20% savings by doing that. And so then what I talk about, and then, you know, we work within the wholesale to retail industry. Something that, and the example that I use is the Coles Woolies example with, say, Coca-Cola. I say, you know, how we work is not dissimilar to any other industry. You know, Coca-Cola, you know, approach Woolworths as an example, and they say, hey, Woolworths, you know, if you sell $2 million a year worth of product, we'll rebate you back X amount of dollars. If you sell, you know, $10 million a year worth of product, we'll rebate you back X amount of dollars. I say that's exactly how our business opportunity works. Is we have a rebate scale where if you generate more turnover, you move up. So I draw the rebate scale. And I say there's 3 ways to generate turnover. So one is through what you use. And that's where I'll do a $400 example, the $400 a month, 100 points, and what that means to them. I say the second is through what you sell, and I talk about that they can make instant profit. You know, that there's a wholesale to retail marketplace there. There's a 30 to 35% retail marketplace. So there's products there that you can sell. And the third is through who you refer the concept onto. And then I give 2 examples. I talk about the 15% bonus. I say when you have a business that, you know, reaches 15%, that's roughly about $1,000 a month. When you have a business that reaches the top of the rebate scale, it's roughly about $3,000 a month. And obviously you go back and forth, it's still the one piece of paper, so you can go back to their 10-year timeline, you can reference things that they talked about. And then I say, look, and if, you know, I know this is just, you know, a real casual catch up, but the real power in what we do is you have then the opportunity to add value and help other people do the same thing. And there's a 6% royalty then for every person you help reach the top of the rebate scale. You help 3, $7,000 a month, you help 6, that's $20,000 a month. And I do a real quick explanation of that as a bigger income picture. But then you go back to the close, right? And you're talking along this way, you're bouncing back and forth, it's a communication, it's pen to paper. But then you go back to, but hey, you know, a lot of that was a whole lot of, you know, information. But here's step 1, which, you know, you agreed made sense, right? Right now you've got expenses running through your household. And what if we could help you just cut back on a margin of those expenses just simply by accessing some of our goods and services and getting some savings? I mean, would that make sense to you? And then it's the same close that you would close with anyways. Well, obviously, you know, if that makes sense, then you can refer other people on. So why don't we just get your computer number today so you can start researching and start that research process. And it's the same close. Does that make sense? And then it's IBO options and you roll through that. But that's a drawn plan, and that's not hard. All of us could do that, and you grab a coffee with someone, and what that means, it alleviates the pressure off you in terms of the plan that you're booking with someone, okay? Because if you're booking a plan with someone and you are trying to set them up so they're expecting to see a presentation, without like this surprise attack, you have to do a professional invitation. You have to explain to someone, I'm going to be showing something to you. If you're inviting someone in terms of, let's just have a casual chat about what we're working on, and I'd love to hear about what you're working on, that's easy. That's so easy, and you control the time and you control what you put into it. Now, if you were doing a buffer, you would end the conversation there, or even sooner if you were doing a buffer. Loan them a contact tool, book them into the preview, book a follow-up. But if you're, and I would cut it off with someone if you feel like they're not giving you much information, right? Because if you feel like you're not connecting well and you feel like you're just talking at them, stop it, loan them information, get back in front of them, and sometimes that 2-day window builds their trust in you a lot stronger, and you can then move on and you can kind of walk them through that process a little bit more, or they just need to get into a preview environment. But it's hard when you've started a flip chart. Sometimes, you know, most of us have gone and shown plans to people with the flip chart, and halfway through it's like, this is a waste of time, you know, because they're just sitting there like and you just feel like you're talking at them, and it's just horrible. And so sometimes, but it's hard. You can't just stop a flip chart halfway through and close it, because they can see how much you've got left, and so it just looks weird. Whereas when you're drawing it out and you're having a conversation, you know, you can control it. So you can make it a buffer. You can book it like you would a buffer, and turn it into a plan, or you can just book it as a plan and move through that. So does that make sense? And that's not hard, right? I mean, you could quite comfortably go out tomorrow and do 2 or 3 of those, you know, quite comfortably without any skin off your back. And it's a real easy invitation. It's like you could text someone right now and say, look, was thinking about you tonight. I'm working on a couple of things for 2019. Would love to hear your plans and have a chat over it. Like, how hard is that? Really? Like, how hard is that? So that's, you know, and why am I saying that? If you're getting great results with the flip chart and you're confident in the flip chart, this is not like, hey, go change directions and do something else. Not at all. It's just like, hey, there's a percentage of people on your list that you're not talking to because you're not inviting them for one reason or the other. And if it means that you can get in front of them easier with a buffer style invitation and just move through that process faster and do a drawn plan, then do it. You know, get in front of people is the bottom line. And it doesn't matter what you're utilizing to do that.